Okay, for lesson 1, let's talk about adding and subtracting whole numbers and money. There's a couple things that we want to review before we actually get into this full topic. We need to make sure that we have an idea of place value. So let's review place value. So I'm going to make my decimal point, and then I'm going to have some places to the left of the decimal point. And those aren't the only places to the left. It keeps on going. And to the right of the decimal point, I'm going to put down a few lines here for the place values to the right. Now I'm going to change the color here, and let's review this. Now to the left of the decimal point, what's the first place called? And if you said to yourself ones, you are correct. So we have the ones place, the tens place, the hundreds place. I'm going to have to write over my typing up there, and it keeps on going. So in other words, every set of 3, they kind of go in groups of 3. So I have this first set is the ones. That whole set is called the ones. And then the next set would be another group of 3, and so on. Now to the right of the decimal point, the first place is called the tenths. And all these end in a THS at the end. So I have tenths, hundredths, THS, then I have thousandths, and that's probably the last one I'm going to put here because we're not going to go much further than that in this particular topic. So notice all of them end in a THS. Now also when we're talking about adding and subtracting, what's the answer in a addition problem called, and what's the answer in a subtraction problem called? Well, the answer in an addition problem is called a sum. So in other words, when we add 2 or more numbers together and we get an answer, that's called the sum. Now when we subtract numbers, the answer is called the difference. And most of you probably remember that. All right, let's take a look at our our first example. Now in our first example, we're going to add $2 to $1.25. So we're going to add $2 and $1.25. Now certainly you could think of this as just the whole number 2 and then add $1.25. That there is a shortcut to that. But you got to kind of understand the background before you use any shortcuts of something. So let's think, since we're involving a decimal here, let's think of this whole number of 2. Let's think of it as a decimal. And remember, any whole number we can write with that digit 0.0. Okay? So in other words, I could think of 3 as 3.0. I could think of 4 as 4.0. Really, they are decimals. But with money, though, money always has 2 decimal places to the right of the decimal. So what we do with the 2 or the 2.0 is we make sure that we have 2.00. Now this is in dollars and cents. So I have $2, and I'm going to add to it. Now this is where we need to review this. We want to add to it $1.25. I want to make sure that my ones are lined, I want to make sure that our hundredths are lined up, our tenths are lined up, and our ones are lined up. So I'm going to write down 1.25, and also I want to make sure our decimals are lined up. So notice here that I've got my hundredths lined up, my tenths lined up, and my ones lined up. Now we just add. We move our decimal point straight down, and when you're adding or subtracting decimals, you move the decimal straight down, and we always start on the right. So 0 plus 5 is 5, 0 plus 2 is 2, and 2 plus 1 is 3. And we end it off with a dollar sign because we're talking about money here. So we have $3.25 is our sum since we're adding. Now our second example, kind of the same type of thing. I want to make sure that I write, since I have a decimal here, I want to write $5 as a decimal. So 5.00. Then I'm going to add to it $2.53. Notice I have everything lined up. I have my hundredths lined up, I have my tenths lined up, I have my decimals lined up, and I have my ones lined up. And I start by moving my decimal point straight down, and now we start on the right, and we simply add. 0 and 3 is 3, 0 and 5 is 5, and 5 plus 2 is 7, and end it off with our dollar sign. So $7.53 is our sum. Now you're going to get problems where we need to carry the digits and so on. So for example, just to review that, and not a money problem here, but let's say that we have, we're going to add 18 to that. Well, we add our ones, 8 and 7 is 15, and you always write down the ones place of 15, which is 5, and you carry the left digit. All right, remember that? 6 and 1, now we add 1, 6 and 1, and we get a sum of 85. All right, basically the same concept when you're subtracting money problems. So I'm going to make sure that I write 4 as in terms of money. So 4.00 minus, and again I line everything up. The hundredths, the tenths, and the ones. Now notice here that you have to subtract in the order the problem is. I cannot do this and take 2.60 minus 4.00. That's not what it's asking. And in fact, you get a totally different answer from what we get over here. And this answer is wrong because I didn't subtract in order. I have to subtract these in order. So I have to take the 4.00 minus 2.60. Unlike addition, in addition it doesn't matter. And I'm backtracking a little bit, but if I have 14 plus 16, well, I could think of that like this, 14 plus 16. Or I could think of it as 16 plus 14. The order you add does not make a difference, but the order you subtract does. Now let's finish this problem off. So I'm going to move my decimal straight down. Let's see, 0 minus 0 is 0. Now I've got a little problem here. I cannot take 6 away from nothing. If you don't have any money and somebody comes up to you in the hallway and says, hey, could I borrow $3 from you, or in this case $6? Well, if you don't have any money, you can't do it, right? So we need to borrow. So you always go to the digit that's to the left of the one we want to borrow for. You always borrow 1. That leaves 3. So borrow 1 from the 4. That leaves 3. And then the one we borrowed, we put down where we need to borrow it to. Now I can subtract. 10 minus 6 is 4. 3 minus 2 is 1. End it off with the decimal point. And that's just kind of a brief explanation of adding and subtracting whole numbers and money. So just be careful with the decimal points. Make sure your place values are lined up.